Good morning, YouTube. It's 10 a.m. in the great state of Texas, and we're opening up a fresh box of epoxy. Today we're doing another epoxy project. Had a little bit more time this week to get a project in, so instead of just using some scrap wood like we did last week, even though I still have half that piece of scrap wood available, today we're going to be doing an epoxy project. So East Coast Resin, 2 gallons, got this fresh out of the mail. Open this up, and we're going to mix about 24 ounces. And we're going to make just a little pot. Not really a bowl, but more of a pot. So if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you guys know I love this like blue turquoise looking color here. And we've been using some rounder type of bowls, but decided to switch up the shape and the size of the project today. Last week's project using that scrap piece of wood, I thought, you know what, let's just do something a little bit smaller than we were typically doing. So we're going to fill up this container here. And I initially had 2 of these cylindrical containers, and one of them was cracked, and I didn't realize that until I started to pour the epoxy in it, so that's on me. And a lot of epoxy poured out, so I had to end up switching gears. 4.5 hours later, I've got a cylinder, and I've got a small, shallower little bowl here. So one's going to be obviously the lid, and then the other one's going to be the main body of the pot. And just going to, get these onto the lathe and make something, a little cooler out of them. But you can see here, it's not a large project, small, project for this week. My lathe, in all honesty, is on its last legs. And, instead of beating it up, sometimes it's just cool to make smaller projects as well. Last week's project was a little bit smaller than we're used to on the channel, but not a big deal. Still got these giant waste blocks that we're going to put on there. Use some hot glue. Don't be stingy with your hot glue, by the way, if you're doing this. And then we're just going to reattach this so that the glue continues to pour out of it, which, picked up that trick, I think, on TikTok of just gluing the end to it, but, I'm sure there's hundreds of ways to do it. So drilling guide holes, and for the first time in a long time, using these 2x4 pieces, the wood actually is going to end up splitting on me on one of these. And I haven't had that happen in a very long time. I used to use the thinner half-inch boards, but I seem to have gone over to using the larger 2x4s. And that crack has never happened in a very long time. I just ended up putting a crazy amount of hot glue in there and then just sealing everything up real good. The other attachment points were okay, so I felt confident that this was going to end up holding throughout the entire project. So I just, risked the biscuit there a little bit. But got this onto the lathe. Obviously, there's not going to be a whole lot of problems in this week's project, thank goodness. I think with the smaller projects, I tend not to have as many issues, not so many catastrophes, which works out for me because if you guys watched the video from about 2 weeks ago, a large piece of epoxy, nearly took my eyeball out. But this one went relatively smooth. A little bit about this, I put this in the pressure pot for about 4.5 hours, and in all honesty, this has not cured more than 24 hours. So it's still really crazy hot here in Texas. So the chisels are just kind of just melting through this epoxy. But if you're a beginner and you're out there, let the epoxy cure. That seems to do a lot better when you're hitting it with the chisels, so just be careful. But just in all honesty, this had it cured more than 24 hours by the time I got to it. But obviously we got it to a nice cylindrical shape that we wanted. And then usually I would just pop off this with a chisel, but I just ended up putting it back on the lathe since there wasn't a lot of material to work with. I just felt confident enough to, just make everything nice and even and flush, and then just take the parting tool and just do it that way. I think that was a lot more effective, saved a lot more time, and I didn't have to risk potentially damaging the epoxy as well. But now that that part's over, now we're just going to make everything nice and flat so we can actually start the gouging portion of it. And this goes pretty smooth. I already like the color here. And then the gouging part really didn't take very much time at all. I ended up using the small carbide tool the entire duration of this. Not a whole lot of issues here. Really worried about chip out since it was a little bit deeper and a little bit smaller. But overall, the gouging portion went relatively smooth. Not a whole lot of issues here with it. Just really took our time. It's where the sanding comes in where I'm going to have some issues. Actually, it's not issues. I just hate sanding, and it's so boring, and gosh, I just hate doing it. But gouging this out, not a whole lot of issues here. We're just getting to a nice depth here, and then we're just going to just switch over to our lid. And you can see the amount of wobble that's on this thing, which is crazy, which didn't have me too excited initially. And there's not a lot of material to work with, so I had to be really careful with this. But in all honesty, there was just enough material to work with where this actually came out pretty cool. So In the beginning, all I was doing was just trying to, make everything nice and even, get everything nice and balanced, because that death wobble is just, it's not fun when you're trying to, do something on a lathe and the lathe is just literally dancing. Even though my lathe is pinned down and it's bolted down and everything, still dances a little bit because the, piece is a little bit uneven. But once we got that part figured out, then we're just going to go ahead and start making our mortise here so we can get this flipped, and then we'll actually start making the lid portion of it. And in all honesty, this was a little bigger than I anticipated, but it ended up working out. So we took that off, and then there was a small little hole where I could just get that chisel in there and then just pop that right off. Boom, had a whole lot of issues there. And then I tried to take the hot glue off, but that didn't end up working. So I was like, all right, screw it, we'll just go take it over back to the lathe and just let the chisels do a majority of the work here. So obviously there's a booger of hot glue that we got off, but we ended up getting that off so we can actually make the reverse mortise on it. The lid portion was obviously bigger than the pot portion, so this took a little bit we had to start and stop the lathe about 100 times, it felt like, just to get a nice idea of what size we needed it to be. But that's all part of the process here. You can see here, stopping the lathe, starting the lathe, and then we actually got to a nice portion that we wanted, and then we're just beginning to get onto the lip of the bowl. And then you can see here, just me starting and stopping, starting and stopping. That seems to be the theme of this one, but got that figured out. And then this was where probably the most sketchy part of the entire project started, because I was mostly worried that I wasn't going to have enough material here to kind of fit on the chuck. And here I ended up messing up a little bit, and I had to come back and flip it again just to make it a little bit bigger. So once we got that in there, not a whole lot of material left to work with, so I just really had to be careful here. I was really worried that it was just going to chip out and explode everywhere, because I've had that happen before in the past. But luckily, nothing exploded, which was good. And then we just built this up enough to have a nice size lid. And there it is before the sanding, obviously. Boop, fits like a glove. And here is the entire mess, just everywhere, all over the workshop. It's fun time just picking stuff up. I swear I spend more time cleaning up the shop than I actually do working on the project, but that's, just part of woodworking. So here we go. My favorite part, sanding. We're going to go from 340 all the way up to 1800. That's kind of been the theme for me recently. Instead of going up to 1000 or 1500, I just stop at 800. I feel like I'm getting a good enough polish with what I want it to do just at that level. So not a whole lot of sanding on my part. It's still annoying to do because there's actually two pieces that need to be sanded all the way. And then we just came back and finished it up with a micro mesh here, and then we're going to hit it with some wood polish, and then we will be done. And not doing the light bright on this one either. I felt like I might do that in another project, but this one, pretty simple, smaller little pot. You can kind of see it. I actually put some glow dust into it, so that's why it looks a little bit grainy, just a little bit. But overall, happy how this one turned out. Just a cool little fluorescent turquoise looking pot, and not a whole lot of issues, not a whole lot of problems. And it's still 1,000 degrees here in the state of Texas, so got another project done, another Sunday, another cool little project here. But anyway, hope you guys liked it. Hope you got something out of it. And next week we will maybe be doing a table, so I'll see you guys in the next one. And don't forget about Thursdays, Pen Thursday, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Alright, so the project is done, and this little guy turned out pretty good. So you got this cool turquoise type color that's also see-through, that's got a pretty good lid on it. And smaller project, a little bit different shape than what we've done in the past. Really like this. I'm definitely going to come back and do this with a different type of color. Not a whole lot of issues with it. The only issue I'm having is that it's 1,000 degrees in the state of Texas right now, and getting into the workshop to make anything is kind of hindering my progress. So there it is. Cool little bowl. It's more like a pot than I'd say anything else, but lid comes off really good. I like the color. Love that sound. But anyway, hope you guys liked it. Hope you got something out of it. And I'm going to go inside where the air conditioner is because it's too hot to be out here. But anyway, see you guys in the next one. All right, peace.